I'm Sue Coppard, and I'm going to tell you about WWOOF. If you haven't heard of what WWOOF is, it originally stood for Working Weekends on Organic Farms, and it's been upgraded since then, and it now stands for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, and it's gone all over the world. And it's an international organisation whereby the members can arrange working stays on organic farms and small holdings. And you don't pay for your accommodation and your food, and they don't pay you for your work. It's a straight exchange. And I think it's a win-win one, really, because most people enjoy it. So WWOOF came about in October 1971, and I was the secretary living and working in London, which I enjoyed, but I did miss the countryside. Because when I was a kid, I used to stay on my uncle's farm, and I loved it. And one day I was watching the autumn leaves bowling along the pavement, and I thought, I've got to get out of the country somehow. I wonder if there's a farm that would let me stay with them in exchange for working on their land. But then I thought, could be a bit lonely mucking out the pigs all on my own. I wonder if anyone else would like to come and do this. And then I also thought it would have to be an organic farm because they need more manual labour, whereas a big high-tech farm wouldn't have any use for unskilled townie labour. So I told this to a friend. He said, that's a good idea. Why don't you consult Michael Allaby? Michael Allaby was a journalist in the Soil Association. He produced a magazine called Span, not Spam. And I told him about it. He said, yes, he said, the person who could help you is John Davey. And John Davey was two things. He was the science correspondent of The Observer, and he was also vice principal of Emerson College down in Sussex. And Emerson College was an adult college for people wanting to study Rudolf Steiner's metaphysical philosophy of life. And one aspect of this was agriculture, which is where we come in. So I wrote to John Davey, and he said, what a nice idea, come down and meet us. So I went down to East Grinstead and went to the college and met him, and he introduced me to the three farmers. And they were very sceptical. They didn't say so, but I could see they were thinking, well, good are a load of towny amateurs going to be on our land. But John Davey said, fix a trial weekend. So they had to fix a trial weekend. So I beetled back to London, and I hastily put an advertisement in Time Out magazine saying, working weekends on organic farms, box number. And I got 15 replies, which was just great. So I wrote to them, I said, look, we've got this weekend fixed at Emerson College, working in exchange for staying. Would you like to come? And in the end, 3 of us went down from Victoria Station on the train and went to Emerson College and had supper with the students. And we were shown to our various rooms, and I was sleeping in a room in Miss Castelletz's cottage. She was one of the farmers. And it was very beautiful because there were rafters in the ceiling and dried herbs hanging down, and a big window with the full moon shining in and owls hooting outside. Just beautiful. So the next morning we had breakfast and we were shown to our place of work, and that was a large field on their farm. And our job was rural housework, really, because we had to hack back encroaching brambles on this field, and we also had to clear out a ditch which was blocked. So it was a lovely day and the birds were singing, and we set to work happily. They were very nice, the other two. We really got on very well, and they were lovely company. We worked hard, even though we were talking. And but then we went in for lunch, and then we came out in the afternoon and worked a lot more. And they gave us strawberry jam and cream tea in the barn, sitting on bales of hay. And pigeons were cooing above and cows were mooing next door. It was wonderful. For someone from London, it was bliss. We worked hard on the Sunday morning too, and after lunch, the farmers came and they said to us, oh, you've done quite well, haven't you? Would you like to fix another weekend? So I said, yes. So that was the beginning of WWOOF. And then it grew organically. dear Michael Allaby wrote an article about WWOOF, and he entitled it Coppard's Land Army. And various people read this. Some people with properties, land, you know, farms and so on, wrote to me saying, would you like to come and work on my place? And other people, would-be woofers, wannabe woofers, wrote to me and said, can I join, please? So the two sides of the arrangement kept more or less, keeping, in proportion to one another. In this article, there was a magazine in the Portobello area of London called Seed. It was a very quirky little magazine and very alternative. And they rang me and said, can we interview you? So I met them for a coffee and a chat. And it transpired that they were between secretaries and I was between jobs, so I became their secretary. And I went to work with them, and I wrote the article myself, and I called it WWOOF, or Rent-a-Surf. So it kept on spreading, and all of us did our part, sort of putting on stands in exhibitions and writing little articles for magazines and being interviewed on the media occasionally. We did all sorts of lovely work. I did haymaking at Emerson College, which was just like being in a Constable picture. It was lovely, riding on top of the hay wagon, and it was swelteringly hot, and there was a pool in this woodland, and we were able to go and swim in the pool after work. It was brilliant. And I saw 2 glowworms there as well, the first I'd ever seen. And we did stirring biodynamic preparations. Now, Emerson College Farm was not just organic, it was biodynamic, which is more magic really, because it taps planetary influences and uses homeopathic preparations. And the homeopathic preparation we had to stir into a big barrel of rainwater. We had to stir it for a mighty long time to get it thoroughly dispersed. We had a broom that we had to sort of stir round and round and round and round. As soon as it was going really well, we had to stir it round the other way. And this went on for it seemed like most of the morning, but it must have been truly stirred in. Anyway, and then it went off to be sprayed onto the crops and onto the land, because it's very nutritious. I think it's magic really. It makes them grow very well. It adds to the fertility of the land. Oh yes, I went to one farm, and they said, would I mind helping the farm manager and his son haymaking? So I was very happy to. And I rode on the back of the tractor through this lane with elderflowers blooming and foxgloves blooming and birds singing like mad. And we got to the hayfield. There were all these bales of hay around, and they needed stacking onto the trailer. So the 2 men started doing that. But it was not very stable. It didn't look safe at all. But I knew what to do because I'd learned at Emerson. So I showed them the magic pattern of, you get a trailer, and you start from the back, and you always load from the outside inward. So bales, 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 and then up the middle. And then the next row, you do completely differently, so it holds it all together, like that. And then you keep on changing the pattern until it gets to a sort of suitable height, and then you trundle it off. So we worked all the morning, very hard. We got all the hay off the field, and it was extremely hot. We went to the next door. We went to a pub right nearby and had a cider, and it was wonderful. And I've done muck spreading in Wales and sheep herding in the Isle of Man. That's very beautiful. It had a lot of cornflowers and poppies blooming, and we were very high up, and there was this sort of track, and I like doing sheep herding. You become a human sheepdog. So you sort of have to you've got your herd of sheep, your flock of sheep there, and you have to I wasn't on my own doing this, I was with a lot of people, and we all had to sort of contain them and get them along the lane, and that was lovely. And I've done cider making in Somerset, where you get a great big mincer, and you throw all the apples in, and then it goes around exceptionally fast, and you get apple slush. And then to get the juice out of this, you've got a press, and it's round on the bottom, with a top which you can wind down. So the bottom is spread with straw, and then you cover it with a whole layer of apple slush, then you put more straw on, and then you put more apple slush, and you build up a kind of layer cake, and eventually they decide it's high enough, and you'll get one of these arms from the top section, and you go round and round and round, getting the top further and further down so that it eventually squeezes practically all of the juice out of this cake, and off it goes in a container to be allowed to ferment and turn into cider. Oh yes, we had a wonderful time on the Isle of Wight. 4 of us went down for one Easter. And the first morning we were out there on her land, surrounded by trees and spring birds singing, and we had to take down an old fence and dismantle it. It was a wire fence, so it took us quite a long time to take all the nails out and everything. The next day we went to the beach, and we collected seaweed to take it for her to put on her garden because it adds a great amount of fertility. Oh, and on Easter Sunday she gave us an Easter egg hunt around her garden, which was nice. We used to woof at a convent in Maidenhead, and I went there, and it was a big walled garden full of vegetable beds, and the person who manned it, who looked after this place, was a lovely lady called Sister Mary, and she wore welly boots and dungarees and a wimple because it was a convent, and I haven't said yet it was a silent convent, but she loved having woofers there because she could chat to us. She certainly did chat to us. She told us a lot of stuff. She told us about 2 woofers that had been there previously. And one was a young girl who'd always wanted the religious life, and her parents had stopped her from getting involved with the religion because they didn't want her to do that. But she kept going woofing at this convent, and eventually they taught her a lot, and she took orders and became a fully fledged nun. So you never know where woof will get you. And then there was a young man, a very angry young man, so she put him to dig the veg beds. And he got so much energy from being furious, I don't know why, he dug the whole darn lot. And by that time he'd finished digging them, he was much, much happier because he'd got rid of all his anger. I've done hoeing cabbages on the silly Isle of St. Martin, which is a little fairyland. And this one, I was working on my own. And long, long lines of baby cabbages that needed hoeing by hand. So I did this, and as you can imagine, my brain was ferociously going round and round with thoughts when I started. But by the time I'd finished, after 3 days, I'd sort of sunk all my thoughts, and I was just like a still pool of water. It was like a meditation. Oh, we did vegetables in Ashdown Forest and a garden of a lovely little cottage. The cottage was fun because we had to go up to the attic to use the pump to get water up from the well. But anyway, on the Saturday evening, her friend had invited us all over to her cottage. So after supper, we walked through the forest by moonlight. And this dear little cat that lived in the cottage trotted along with us. And as we got near the friend's cottage, this gorgeous music was coming through the trees. I hadn't heard it before. It was just beautiful. And it turned out it was Vivaldi's 4 Seasons. And so I later bought a copy of that because I was so taken with it. And we went to woof with someone called Hugh Coates, who was the chairman of the Soil Association at that time. And he knew an awful lot about what organic means and the reasons for being organic. So after Saturday supper, he sat us down and he gave us a long discourse on why you should be organic and what are the advantages and how you do it. And we became evangelical converts, really. We all became total converts. Lots of other woofers have done other work that I haven't done. A fun one is dragging timber from a woodland by a horse. And a horse is more efficient in woodland than a tractor would be. They've done cheese making, bread making, beekeeping, charcoal making, green building with straw or with cob and lime. So we all enjoyed this immensely. You know, there's so many benefits to going woofing. You've got beautiful countryside and you've got in touch with nature, physical exercise to make you fit, lots of good organic food to eat. And the people in the organic movement are particularly special because they're really interesting people that think about life and care about what happens to the planet. So they're really good company, and it was great fun, of course, as you can imagine. And I remember lots of lovely winter evenings sitting round a roaring log fire, drinking homemade wine and having a lot of good conversation. That was great. If you want to change from living a town life to a country life, WWOOF can help you do it, because you can study different methods of food production and all sorts of things that would help you have a career in the countryside. In fact, two of the later chairmen of the Soil Association had started off as woofers, and they learnt enough to have their own little property and grow vegetables and food and things. And they, not at the same time, they became chairman of the Soil Association. I do think that to go woofing is one of the happiest and cheapest ways of seeing the country, really. Yes, that the WWOOF hosts are very happy with WWOOF as well. I just heard of one today, a WWOOF host and his wife. He was from Germany, and they couldn't leave their animals to go off to Germany, see, but they had this woofer come who was a German woofer, and he was a 5-star woofer. He was really good and efficient and knew what he was doing, and they got along so well that they asked whether he would consider staying and woofing there, looking after the property while they were away over Christmas, and he did that, so he set them free. So WWOOF spread abroad. Various people from abroad had woofed in England. To woof is a verb. They'd woofed in England, or I mean the UK, don't I? And they'd enjoyed it so much that they'd taken the idea back to their own country and set up a WWOOF organisation there. And I might say all the WWOOFs around the country are self-governing, independent, which is probably far more stable than one big monolithic hierarchy of organisation. And I must say at this point that the organisers of WWOOF around the world are brilliant. They're so dedicated and so inspired, and they work so hard. That's the reason WWOOF has spread the way it has, apart from the fact that the organic cause is so inspiring anyway. I'll tell you the numbers. Now, there's over 140 countries with WWOOF hosts where you can go and do woofing. And there's 52 countries with national WWOOF organisations. The sun never sets on WWOOF. And you really can go many places in the world and live as a native, you know, working with the people and helping them on their farms. And at the meetings, various bright ideas have bubbled up and been implemented. One is FOWO, that's another acronym. This one stands for the Federation of WWOOF Organisations, because it became apparent at the international gatherings of WWOOF that someone was needed to speak for WWOOF on occasions, and it was too confusing for journalists to have an unlimited number of ordinary independent WWOOFs. So FOWO sort of speaks for WWOOF when it's needed, and it also helps any WWOOFs sort out their problems. I think WWOOF is really important because it helps the organic movement, which is so important. Who can go woofing? Well, anyone of 16 and over. And I would say at this point that I've got some feedback from a gentleman of 70 here somewhere. And he went woofing at 70, and I can't find it. Oh, yes, I can. He says in the newsletter, a fabulous experience, and one I would strongly recommend to all seniors who are still out there looking for fun, travel and adventure. There are some other lovely feedbacks from woofers. I never went woofing without learning something valuable, meeting lovely, interesting people and seeing new, ravishing parts of the UK. It enhanced my life immeasurably. I'll never forget my fortnight woofing, a window to another world my life seems awfully conventional by comparison. Woofing has changed my life. It inspired me so much that I decided I wanted to become a farmer. And so some farmers said, "We are really grateful and excited by the progress on our croft, made possible with the assistance of woofers. We feel we have friends all over the world now, and we hope you will always remember with affection your time with us here. Children are no obstacle to woofing. Our experience of small families woofing is very positive." Now that is very good to know, because a lot of organic farms are out on a limb rather. They may be a bit isolated, and their children love having children come and play with them. And so also, if you're in a regular job and you can't take chunks of time to go away and woof, it's certainly in the UK you can do weekend woofing. Not at all farms, but your list of farmers and smallholders will say which people like to have weekend help. And you don't need preliminary experience of growing or gardening at all, but you have to be willing. A willing and open-minded attitude, and hopefully some interest in what you're doing, is what's required. If woofers end up their feedback, "I wish I'd known about woofing ages ago." So I'm asking you, and people watching on the internet, to tell your friends and contacts and family about woof, because if it grabs them, it will change their life. I always say woof is a gateway to a new way of life. Now, if you want to know an awful lot more about woof, you go to the internet or Facebook, you'll see loads about it, videos of woofers woofing, articles written by them. So all you have to do is to Google woof, WWOOF. Thank you.
Thank you.